when we landed, we saw that PewDiePie had already played it, and we're like, "Oh my goodness!"
Oh my god, that must be so cool.
Guys, I am really excited today because today, me and my two brothers and Richie are coming together to dive deep into the backstory of Richie from Richie's Plank Experience. You guys must have heard of this experience already because it is the most genius play ever. Richie's Plank Experience is not only built for the VR community, but actually for anyone in the world that wants to try VR. You know, it's the one experience that everyone wants to share with his friends and family. It's insane to me how you can stand on top of a building and be so scared while you're actually standing in your living room with VR glasses on. If you want to build your own game or business, guys, listen to this one because there's so much to unpack here.
Richie, excited to have you on today.
Hi, thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, I was really excited that you actually responded. Definitely has been one of the experiences that, you know, I've shared most with everybody. Just want to compliment you for creating such an amazing experience that I think that, you know, not has only done an amazing job in the VR community, but also outside. I remember the first time I did the experience. Was at Jeff's place. It was the first time I tried Oculus and put on the glasses, and I remember the door opening, looking down into that scary height. My hands were sweating, my heart was beating, and I was literally really scared, even though I knew I was standing in a living room and physically nothing potentially could happen to me. I was still really scared. So I've always wondered, like, why? Like, how does that just happen?
Well, we can try to answer that question if you'd like. We have some theories, but I'm not a scientist in this department, so they're only like guest theories. And I can talk about some tricks and things that people don't notice that we did to give you that feeling.
Inside scoops, I like it.
Yeah.
How does it go? How does it come together? I'm really curious.
Yeah. So when we were designing the game, we were thinking, what's some environments where we can have a lot of objects between you and the ground? And we tried a few different things, but the one that worked the best was a city because there's a lot of things in variation of height, and sort of related to this question is sometimes people go, why don't you just make it higher? Like, go higher. But the higher you go, the depth perception starts working less. It's like when you're looking out of an aeroplane, you kind of just don't really feel the heights so much as standing on top of a building looking down.
Have you also tried it, like building it higher and see what kind of effect it was?
Scary. But so it's not what you would think, and it's because on the top of a building, there's the plank itself. There's your hands, and then there's an elevator vent to your right, like a meter after that, and then there's an elevator vent to your left, another few meters down after that, and then you start seeing a cable going between you and the building next to you, which happens in the real world, like data cables and things like that. And then there's flag masts and more windows, chunks, tiles coming out of the building. And now we're like 50 meters down and there's multiple layers of clouds. And so when you're looking down and your head moves just a little bit, all these things just make what's called a parallax effect. And it's, even though it doesn't look photorealistic, especially on the Oculus Quest, your heart doesn't know that, and it thinks it's real at that point. And we put you in the elevator as well as a way to start the experience, but this is, I won't take credit for this. It's partly it was partly unintentional, but you go from being claustrophobic in a tight space to the opposite, like as soon as the doors open, and so it makes it a little bit of a shock. And then there's like as you take your first step on the plank, there's like 7 different sounds start playing. So there's every like 15 centimeters your head moves forward, we play a creaky plank sound. And so you probably noticed that one. That's a fairly obvious one. There's the stereo wind changes as you turn your head from left and right, which happens as when the wind collects your ear, it changes sounds a little bit. But then some real subliminal ones, like there's a constantly increasing heartbeat. And so it's getting faster and faster the entire time. And instead of, it can't go on infinite, so we drop it back down instantly again. And then it's designed so your body will think it's its own heart rate getting faster.
Oh, wow. And you intentionally just drop the sound of the heartbeat so you physically you remember it or something that it sticks with you.
Yeah,
it's just like, for the moment.
A couple of people have said, I can feel my own heart beating, or I can. I'm starting.
But it was
to
not
panic.
their heart. It was just the sound of it. Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
It's
a really
subtle,
cool technique, actually. It's also used in a lot of movies, right?
Yeah, I think in movies they have a thing called a shepherd's tone, which is a sound that's constantly increasing. Like they used it in that Dunkirk movie, and it makes people get uneasy and they start to panic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and also a clock, something that helps to speed up the tempo or the feeling like you have to no time. Great.
And as you're like halfway along the plank, there's like very subtle, out of tune violin. But unless you really listen carefully, you won't even. They're nearly like subliminal strength. And yeah, so there's some of the things that we did to help give that feeling. And
where did that inspiration come from? Is that something that you just test, or
so in Japan, this is when like the HTC Vive like came out, like opening week kind of thing in 2016, early. They had Bandai Namco set up an experiment in a suburb in Japan, and it's a suburb that had that giant robot. So we went to see that, and this was on our honeymoon, my wife Tony and I, and she's the CEO of the company. They had a plank experience, and I'm like, holy shit! Oh, that was everyone there was waiting to do this plank. They had like 12 other VR experiences that they had made as well, and none of them were being used. Only this plank one was being used. So mad respect to them for being the first to do a heights experience in virtual reality. It was definitely an inspiration for us. It inspired me. But when I tried it, I'm like, I could definitely see some areas of improvement. And we designed a way that you might have used where you buy a plank of wood from your hardware store of any size and shape and height and length and width, and you pop it into your living room and you use the tools inside the game to clone that plank, and it like to the millimeter accuracy, and it really makes the brain think it's real. And
I think that is a really a brilliant technique. I haven't used it with a plank, but I can definitely understand that it would be a much more frightening and immersive experience that way. But was that something that you designed from the beginning? Like, oh, we need a plank in this, or was that something that came along while building?
No, that was pretty much the only reason I wanted to do it. To design a way to map it and stay in the right position. I knew if that wasn't going to work, we weren't going to get the marketing that we were after in order to get sales. So we needed that feature from this. Like that was a definite, and it worked. Like the first version I made in a weekend, and it looked hideous. Like the graphics were just. I opened it up the other day and I was very embarrassed. But we took
didn't
it
see
to
the
a
light of
friend.
day.
Yeah. No, well, it did. We took it to a friend's Mexican restaurant and asked if we could set it up there to experiment on their customers.
Oh,
And
nice.
the customers loved it and the staff loved it. And they were all like, some of them were terrified. They wouldn't leave the elevator. And that's like, we're like, oh, we're onto something. So.
Okay, so even with the very first version, it already was very immersive.
Yeah, and it was just like ugly white boxes as buildings with, and
awesome.
We released it onto the Steam with a little bit of an updated graphics, as good as a developer can do. And one of the comments in the first week was the graphics look like they found the worst looking building assets in the Unity asset store and said, nah, I think I can do worse than that. I was like, oh, fair play. So we went and hired a photorealism modeler, and a few months after that, and they helped it look like it does today. The reason why it's scary. So we went off a bit off topic there. There's some of the tricks we did in the game, but psychologically wise, I'm not a psychologist. I have zero training in psychology. But after speaking with psychologists, some of them use it in their own practices and to help people with agoraphobia, because they have debilitating fear of heights where they can't even go in real world elevators and escalators. It affects their jobs and day-to-day life. So they use Richie's plank for exposure therapy.
Oh, great. That is awesome.
Yeah. But the theory there is, the brain knows it's not real, the conscious mind, but the animal brain, or their heart, I call it, it thinks that they're in immense danger. So the conscious brain has to tell the rest of the brain that it's safe and that it's okay and you can do it. But that conflict causes fear, and you still get all the cortisol and adrenaline. And when you get that hit, it can last for like half an hour for people after they've come out. Apparently.
Yeah, they're still shook up.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. It's so unreal that you can create something out of nothing, actually, and mimic it as real life and have those same kind of emotions and feelings and fear and angers. That's so great, man. That's amazing.
It is strange. Like, there's people that have skydived and then they wouldn't walk the plank, and I'm like, that doesn't make sense. But skydiving's way scarier. And they're like, yeah, but when I was skydiving, I had a parachute, and I'm like, but
do you feel safe?
It would be interesting just to have some kind of parachute then up in the elevator and walk the plank. Like, would it be any different? You know, would that make a difference? Like, it's so the brain tells them there's a safety net or something, right? Like, is that the reason? Well, that's really weird.
I'm not sure how that works, but I will say that that's why there's like safety guidelines, because people can react so unexpectedly and so powerfully. So when you start the game and in the elevator, there's those messages to say, hey, look, this can be quite powerful. Make sure there's a couple of people there ready to guide you in case you do react unexpectedly. And we see those YouTube videos where people like push each other, thinking it's funny, but that can result in all sorts of injuries. And when people say, sometimes people are on the plank and they go, can I jump? And the supervisor's like, yeah, you can jump. But then they really jump instead of just stepping off. So we make sure, we try to tell people to say, step off the plank. You can step off, don't jump off. So what are your favorite games?
Favorite games? Well,
I'm a diehard Zelda fan. I'm just all the way Zelda for me. It's like I love just the combination of roaming around, exploring, treasure hunting almost, but also the fighting ability and but also the puzzles. Like it's pretty complicated at sometimes. You really have to find out, and you're stuck. But it's so rewarding after you just go through and you won it. So that Zelda's for me an all-time favorite.
Yeah.
That's very interesting for me because I've always been a World of Warcraft fan. Like for many years, I've played the game and more of an open world. But whenever I try this in virtual reality, I must say that I'm very quickly bored. And I don't know if it's the game that it's just boring yet. But in virtual reality, I really like quick experiences like Richie's Plank or Super Hot, Pistol Whip. Like you start directly. That's what's really interesting because I've always been like a geek on open world games. And the other day I don't even remember the game. I bought it 15 minutes in. I was stuck in like the beginning phase of the game and I was just so bored that I quit and I never opened it again.
It's happened to me.
It's interesting.
Yeah. The only games I play in VR are the ones that give the short and intense and a quick break. Like Thrill of the Fight is a boxing one and it's good for exercise, but you can just go in there for 5 minutes and then you're done.
And sweaty.
What's your favorite, Rich?
Probably the Thrill of the Fight at the moment. You get some exercise at the same time.
Yeah, that's so great. It's so great to have some point that you can exercise and have fun. Like when I played Pistol Whip at Jeff's place, I was soaked up with sweat. I was totally, and I'm not prepared for this. And then the next day, I was really sore. My muscles really sore. Like, what the hell is going on? Like, what is this? But it's so great that there's a possibility to have exercise and gaming fused into one. Just have those full immersive experiences.
Yeah, I would like to see more sitting down VR games. I think at the start it was frowned upon because you're not taking advantage of being able to walk around and move around. But I think even though it's still very early days, I think it has matured enough now where some people want to have a break and want to have some relaxed time. And we're ready. I think VR is ready for that now.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're still a bit of I always feel like we're very early still in this game, like compared to I've saw you saying that in an interview as well of how VR is the future and like hundreds of years or thousands of years, most likely there is some sort of form of that still, right? So it's like we're so early in a way that we're still trying to define how it all shapes.
No, you're right. It's one of my favorite things to ponder on, and I probably got excited. Probably what I'm most excited about with virtual reality and what got me involved. It's like, oh wow, like a lot of tech that we use to communicate and like typewriters redundant now. The old computers are redundant now. For a lot of people, PCs are redundant now. And like eventually a lot of the devices we use today could be redundant as well. And I've said this on Twitter before, and it sometimes starts a debate. But I need to say, to me, it's not that it will happen in our lifetime necessarily, but it's to me, it's an inevitability. And probably when I'm dead, like it could be 1,000 years even, and that is like ultimately we won't have other screens or need other screens, and they'll be looked at like typewriters. Yeah, it's like exactly. What you have to look? You have to have a real screen that you have to hold.
Yeah, it's so heavy.
So why would you? It's just these lenses now, you know.
But like eventually, will you just use the wall as the TV, or not even need a wall. It's
just floating, and you can size it up for any scale you want. And then we're like, why did you have different sizes, monitors, and all that stuff?
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Or Elon Musk just programs it into your brain, like.
Wow, that's inevitable. I don't expect to see that in my lifetime, but that's an inevitability to me. And we'll end up holding some sort of battery in our pocket or whatever, and that's where the chips and stuff will be for a while. But that's all that will be needed. And like, you use your phone, you just hold your hand up to your ear to use your phone. Like, that's because all the hand tracking can do that already. And
technology advances. One thing I was curious about, because a lot of, especially on the podcast, we spoke to a couple of creators already, and most of the creators are sort of more like artists that are trying to create, right, their expression. They're creating an animation or a game. And with you, I feel that's maybe a little bit different. And I wanted to ask you on that because looking at your LinkedIn profile, you have a lot of experience actually in business, and that's very interesting to me or to us, right? Like, if you've done a lot already, how did all of that help you build this company, essentially? Because it's Toast is a company above the experience, right?
Yeah, I haven't worked I've been like self-employed for like 22 or 3 years now, which is like more than half my life now. And 20 years. Yeah. Wow.
Damn,
I wasn't expecting to feel so old on this podcast.
Whole life is flashing by.
But yeah, so when I started off as an entrepreneur, I made the entrepreneur. I was always guilty of the entrepreneur's curse, and that is following every idea I had and trying to do too many ideas at the same time, and none of them eventuated. And I know why now. It's because I didn't commit to any of them seriously enough, and there was always a distraction. So, and then I read a book called Good to Great by Jim Collins, which is it's like an old classic business book, and there's a chapter in there about being the value and being the best in the world at one thing, and focusing all your ideas onto one bigger idea. And when companies do that, they do much better than those that try to chase multiple ideas. And so that changed everything for me, and I followed that path for a very long time. And
could you name some examples of ideas that you had? Like, what kind of ideas came in mind?
One was door-to-door computer parts selling. One was Uber for lawn mowing.
Nice.
That actually didn't too bad. We did 1,000 jobs. But then that didn't work out because it wasn't like Uber where you just pick them up and drop them off. Most of the customers wanted a phone call to tell us about their dog, or to say, "Oh, hang on, on Tuesday next week, I have to change it." I'm like, "Oh my goodness!" So every job turned into customer service. And but anyway, I'm getting off topic again. It's been so long since I did all those other ideas. I don't know. There was a spreadsheet with about 30 ideas, and each one was rated for how much do I want to do it, how much do I think it will make money, and how much, and do I have the ability to do it? And then I eventually learned just to do one at a time. And I always avoided making video games because I knew from reading on Reddit about game development and indie game industry what the success rate is. And it's brutal. Like, people spend 3 years of their life, blood, sweat, and tears, and then they go to sell it and it gets like 10 sales. And I'm like, oh, that's just heartbreaking. And So the industry did scare me for a while. I made games as a hobby though, and I kept game development as a hobby, just like a creative outlet. And
was that something that you discovered on your own, or was this something like a school or something that you had your creative side? Yeah. Just as a hobby, it started.
Yeah, just pure hobby. So and that's very common, and I think it's a good way to go until you have enough skills. And I just thought that's how it would go for the rest of my life, kind of thing. But then when look, because I would think to myself, if only I was there at the start of the mobile phone days, if I had the skills I have now, I could have made some of those mobile phone games that were cult classics from the start. Like Fruit Ninja, which was made in Brisbane as well. It's such a good game, such a good hit, perfect match to a touchscreen phone.
Yeah.
But then 2 years later or a few years later, a lot of mobile phone games are out. There's now, I don't know, how many games get published a day on mobile phones? Is it
crazy amount. Yeah, it's crazy amount.
Multiple hundreds a day.
Yeah.
And there's so much competition. There's millions of dollars been spent making games, and it's nearly impossible. It probably feels impossible to indie devs to break through. I mean, the sentiment is, I wish I was there at the start.
Do you feel that's different with the VR because we're sort of at the start?
Yeah, and so I guess that's you picked up on the point I'm trying to make there. I feel like that's a good argument for getting into VR now. So
yeah,
like I saw someone on Reddit go, it's still too early, but I'm like, I want to be in there. And some of the fans still say it's too early, but some of the consumers still think. But I'm like, there'll be people saying it's too early in 100 years from now. I
definitely feel like a lot of people that haven't tried, at least that is what I experienced with Oculus. The first time I put Oculus on my head, like Oculus 2, it was the Quest 2.
Yeah,
I was like blown away. I was like, oh wait, this is we're late almost. Like it's really here already. You know what I mean? Like I thought this was 10 years away at least.
Yeah,
so definitely feel that.
Yeah, I would love to make a comment about Meta, and it kind of bothers me how much Meta bashing and pitchforks there are out on Meta, and a lot of comments about Mark Zuckerberg. I'm like, every time I hear the comment, I'm like, that just looks like bullying to me. Like there's barely even there's not much sustenance in the arguments and the pitchforks. And I'm like, I don't think they realize that without Meta and Mark leading Meta on this direction, investing the amount of money they have been, and that's in the ridiculous high number of billions, we would not have the industry we have today. Like
exactly,
we just wouldn't. And developers are getting so many more sales now with the Quest than they were on PC. Because there's so many more owners, it's more accessible, they're getting played more often. That wouldn't happen without Meta either. And
Mark is so underestimated in that part. Like it's crazy. Like but on the one hand, I also understand it in a way. There's this video in the Netherlands. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I think on YouTube it went pretty viral, of like the 90s, and that people are like talking about phones, and they're like, would you ever carry a mobile phone? You know, and they're like, are you crazy? Why would I ever take a mobile phone outside? Are you guys crazy? Never. I will do that.
You can write me a letter.
You can write me a letter. Why would these companies like push this on us? You know, they're crazy, like the future. And like they recorded like a video like 20 years later with those same people. They found them again. They were like, I can't live without my phone. Bring a new.
Sorry, I don't have time for your interview.
But it's crazy. Like it's. I guess people are always sort of scared for what is coming, and also this whole metaverse thing has this creepy vision towards it, while everybody in reality wants it. Like wait till it's here.
The metaverse is. I feel like I'm too old for the metaverse because I don't quite get it yet. But then I try to put myself in the shoes of someone younger, and I'm like, holy crap, that's going to be a thing. Like that's an inevitability too. And the world might be too soon for it, but I'm like, look at how popular Minecraft is in the open Minecraft servers where kids can get on there and build stuff, and other people can too. Like that's such a beautiful thing that they do, and to me, that beauty will be in the metaverse too, but with even more sophistication. And so and Minecraft to me is a proof of concept of that potential. And just back on the meta thing, like there's other headsets now that are kind of technically similar. They were only even possible because of how many like Snapdragon chips Oculus bought to make more suitable chips and from Qualcomm for that to even be a thing as well. So it's like that wouldn't be happening either, I don't think. And just as a developer, the tools and SDKs that come with Oculus because of the amount they've spent on their developers, it's like night and day. And that drives quality of the whole industry as well. So like as a developer, I got to take my hat off to them. Like we wouldn't be investing so much in our next title if it wasn't for Meta investing so much in VR in general either. Like just not even probably like 10 to 1.
Did you notice that? Like, because the whole Oculus, in my mind, Oculus made VR more mainstream than it ever was before, right?
Yeah.
And you guys released 2017, I think.
PC,
the first experience.
2016
PC.
Yeah.
How was that like in terms of marketing, right? And getting the word out, like did it pick up directly from the beginning or was it really like,
like when Meta came out or when we first published on PC?
Yeah, when I'm curious about like how Richie Splank became such a big like like was it like you released it, everybody started talking about it? I can imagine it has been building up over time, and if the Oculus mainstream thing like had a big influence on that, or maybe you took specific steps actually to get the word out. I'm curious about that.
So, this helps answer a question that I avoided earlier, not intentionally avoided, but you're asking about how the previous business helped. Yeah. And I think one that would have been with marketing. So, and that's also from my wife, Tony, who's, as you know, is the CEO. Yeah. We were both like, we need marketing. We don't want to spend much on marketing. So it has to be kind of like viral marketing. So we intentionally added features to the game that we knew would get YouTubers to play it, and also conversations on Reddit and people remembering, because look, it is just walking a plank. That's like the main feature, and we knew that we'd be brutalized in reviews. So if that was all there was, and that still happens today, like individuals buy it thinking it's a game, and then they're like, "What? Where's level 2?" And I'm like, "What do you mean level 2? That's not a game." That's why we added experience to the name. But we still had to add some other stuff. So there was like 3 superhero missions. There's Easter eggs everywhere. Like there's a bell, and if you ring the bell, you get taken to the North Pole, where you get to play as Santa flying around the city on a sleigh.
Oh, serious? I didn't even know that.
Throwing presents into chimneys. There's on the PC version, there's a soccer field out in the grassy plains, and you fly to the soccer field, and there's a big soccer ball, and you can use your jets to fly into the soccer ball. And
also like the Rocket League game, right? Like, with the cars and But why is it only on PC? Why not taking that feature onto the Quest?
Can't remember. Maybe it is on the Quest now. I honestly can't remember. If it's not, we shouldn't we? That's a crime. Not having that on the Quest. So there's Nightmare mode, Skybrush, where you get to fly around doing skywriting. which is probably the most relaxing part of it. But all of these things were added not mostly for marketing. So that is perception and reviews, but also talking points for people at Christmas time. We know that people get Oculus Quest quite often around Christmas.
I think it's also pretty cool that what you said before is that what you've learned is to focus. And I think that that's the point that I'm like, which is brilliant, because this is it. It's a plank, you know, it's an experience on a plank. And because of that ultimate focus, it becomes so super clear what the experience actually is about. So no other stuff is around it. And the things that are there are actually added for marketing purposes instead of like adding all of these features for something else. Like, so that's a brilliant play.
Yeah, thank you. And like people ask, why don't we add other, or why didn't we have multiple environments? And we definitely could have, but they just weren't as good. And if we spent even an extra hour on other environments, it would mean that the city one is an hour less impressive, like worth of effort. And also, if you, let's say you put your uncle in and we give him 10 choices of a place to walk the plank on, like you want him to walk the one that's the scariest every single time. You don't want him to choose the one that's not like, he might be like, oh, I love cars. I'm going to do the one in the car park. And it's like, Uncle Rob, please don't do that one. It's just not scary, and it just makes the whole thing more like complicated. And it's like, so focus on the one place, and
Are you still expanding the experience, or you're still adding things to it?
Yeah, we're working on something that will come out next year.
Oh, great!
A free update. Yeah,
nice.
Hopefully, if it works out, and
can you tease something away? Can you give some kind of hint? I'm very curious now. You don't have to spoil anything, but
no, I'm panicking now, and
no worries. If it gives too much away, then the whole thing falls apart. I understand.
Yeah, and I know your viewers are probably really smart and they'll figure things out.
That's
a single clue.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Is that as Toast? What are you guys spending most time on now? Then is that the new experience, or how?
So we recently grew from like 6 staff who made Richie's Plank to 20 staff.
Wow.
Like in 21, and someone told me the other day we're about, when we fill these last few roles that we have open right now, we'll hit 35.
Wow. Awesome. Amazing.
Wow.
That's really
I know. Cool. I'm like, that was my reaction. I'm like, what the?
Now we're responsible for all these people. Yeah.
I know.
How, from a business perspective, are you guys doing that? Is it enough to, are you generating enough revenue just from the game, or how do you see that?
Yeah, like as I say before, from sales with Meta, that's the only way we were able to afford to employ so many people. And most of them are working on a new title, which don't even ask about that because it's still too early. But some of them are working on Richie's Plank updates, but not many. In comparison, because it has been 6 years, and we would like to finally publish a proper game and show that we're not a one-hit wonder. And like, if you're on social media, people commenting about VR, they're all going, when are the big titles going to come out? And they are coming, but like they just take years and years to make. And
takes time,
only due to the Quest has studios been willing to commit the funds in the past few years to make these big titles. And so they still not out yet, because the bigger the titles, the longer they take. And I know a few studios, and we are working on it, so they're coming.
Exciting stuff. I'm not sure if it's public or you'd like to share it at all, but or you could give us an idea of how much did it cost to produce Richie's Plank up until it started selling, and how many sales are there in total? I'm curious about that picture, and share what you want to share from it. Or...
The first version took me 3 months of just my time, and probably like $100 worth of models bought from various places to help with the art. So that's very much startup culture. Like that's like hashtag startup back then. And we just said to each other, Tony and I, if we get 1,000 sales by Christmas, which was 3 months away at the time, we'll both do it, like commit to it full time and go from there. And it did like 1,000 sales in the first weekend. So we're like, okay, I guess we're on. But
so what was the moment like that you had like 1,000 sales? And can you remember that time?
Well, like, oh my God, we were really nervous because there was a company in France that had announced a game the day after we announced that it was coming, and they said ours is coming. I'm like, oh my God. Ours was called the Plank Experience, and theirs was called the Walk. And I'm like, oh no, they even sound similar. And so that's why Tony said, we got to rebrand. This was the day before we published. We got to change the name. And so I wanted to call it Jim's Plank Experience, which is my dad's name. And then she said, no, let's just do Richie. And then I'm like, okay, we got to do something. So that's where the name came from. And then luckily we got out first, and it was a little bit better. And I was super nervous. Like there was bugs everywhere, and I'm like, oh. And I was like, it could work really well though. Like this could be something that works out. So we had a holiday booked like straight after we launched it, and when we landed, we saw that PewDiePie had already played it, and we're like, oh my goodness.
Oh my God. That must be so cool.
Yeah. And he even put his underpants over the top of his jeans and had his friends fly him through the lounge room. And I'm like, oh yes. But things like that, like people say, how did you get PewDiePie to play it? And did you see a huge sales spike? And the answer is, like, all of the YouTubers that have played it, like they've just bought it themselves and then just played it. We didn't know they were going to. There's no secret, but the games have to have something unique that's different to everything else, or they're not going to bother. That's really tough. That's nearly too late for that now. Like there's not many games now that offer something like crazy different, but there definitely will be. You just have to figure out what that is. But there was no spike after PewDiePie played it, because VR was just so early back then. His fan base didn't have VR. His fan base were mostly kids. They definitely don't have money to buy a high-end PC and $800 headset back then. And so there was no blip.
But marketing wise, that has like tripled into like all the rest of the influencers starting to talk. That's and like huge exposure.
Brand awareness, as you guys know, it's very rarely a blip. It's multiple viewings over multiple years, and eventually you're like, oh, I know that. Yeah.
So it was really built
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, back to the cost of the build. Still curious about that.
Yeah, it cost $100 and probably what's 3 months worth of work of my time.
Okay, yeah. So it was purely yourself back then, yeah.
So if it was I don't know, let's say it's like for a software developer, let's say $10,000 a month, so $30,000 for the first version. But since then, it's probably cost a few million to make.
Yeah,
that's insane. Yeah.
Maybe I'd say maybe $1 million to get it where it is now. For like that's for an entire team over a few years, with management and ongoing updates and ports and PlayStation and which has been definitely worth it. But yeah, I hope that answers your question. Sales,
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was very interested in the ballpark.
The sales, but there has been 1 million units sold now.
Awesome! Wow, that's incredible.
End of last year. But before you start doing the napkin maths, for the first couple of years of its life, it was a lot cheaper. It was like half the price, and Vive did a big bulk buy as well. So don't do napkin maths.
Yeah, and I've also noticed that you guys have like the commercial licensing type where you rent it out to events, or that you have like that you can set it up, right? Is that also a big part, or is it of the revenue that's coming in?
That was good for relationship building, but we haven't done that. We still do that sometimes, but it's a distraction for our team, and we need to focus. And we kind of, if we do it, it's with a very premium price now. And I think we're probably, there's nothing going to make us take one for a while now, because we need to finish this next title. So, but it's definitely something that we could have done more of. We've had offers to buy the billboard space on the top, like when you're
that's cool
on the plane. But
what you mean, the one where you were on the toilet seat? Or
my staff pranked me by putting.
I don't know if you guys have seen that, but
our team put me on the billboard from a photo from a wedding where I was being silly, and they made it for my birthday. It was pretty funny, but
good team members.
Yeah, we couldn't charge money for advertising in the game without being disrespectful to the people that have paid a lot of money to buy the game. If that makes sense, like that's kind of a slap in the face. So if a big company wanted to buy the entire game and then refunded everyone who had paid for it, like maybe you could sell the advertising then. But I think like you look at games that are sold and then also have ads, it's like, whoa, they're not very popular with the fan base. So don't want to touch that at the moment. But that definitely, I think free to play in VR is something that isn't a thing yet, where it's free to, like mobile phone monetization. And I'm kind of glad that it's not yet. Like, I feel like mobile phone games would be made to where more games that I would enjoy more if they weren't free to play mostly. Like, I prefer Nintendo games, JJ, like you obviously do behind you, and that is you pay a premium for a good, very good, high quality game. But on mobile, that just won't, they don't exist, because they'll get 1-star reviews. People expect it to be free.
True.
And unfortunately, that's just how that platform is now. But VR at the moment is more like the Nintendo Switch business model, where you buy prices are much lower than Nintendo Switch games, but it's you pay money for a good quality product, and that's it. I hope it stays that way for a little while yet.
So yeah, I was very curious, like what with all the experience that you had now with building game, and it's been like 2017, 2018, like what would you have done differently, looking with the experience you have now, if you would start over again?
The plank setup process, like it seems so simple, but we prototype like 10 different ways, like, and that costs so much money. And I'd probably just, if we had to do it again, we wouldn't have to prototype 10 in a row to find the most simple way to fit every scenario. What would we do differently? Probably relax a bit more.
That's a good one.
Have more fun with the whole process.
Yeah, sleep a bit more. Yeah, I haven't got anything profound. Sorry to answer that one.
No, that's already good. Like
that's a profound one, actually, to enjoy the process a little bit more, because I think that's really relatable to most people that are building stuff, and that there's a lot of pressure as well. I can imagine even when you're talking about like going to 30 employees, that's a lot, especially coming from a indie developer $100 budget starting out, like just getting some assets to building like a major company. It's not something that is straightforward to do. So I can imagine that it becomes very stressful, and that there are a lot of
for sure. And
things
that like husband-wife business is stressful and a challenge. It's hard to have a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old girl, and
it's another business.
Work-life integration, and make sure we spend a lot of time with them too. So, but there's we have good leadership at the company to help with those things. It's female-led, so which is unusual for the game industry. Like the 3 people leading the company are all female. And they just do such a good job. And it's become like a place where people really like to work. Like we have a no crunch policy, because if there's crunch, that's my fault and the leadership's fault, not if they have the team's working on what they're meant to be working. That if there's need for crunch, that's our fault, not their fault. So,
good mindset.
Yeah, and like there's no crunch that's created equal. Like if you're paid for that overtime, that's not the same as the company down the road who has crunch and you don't get paid for it. Like
exactly.
The paid crunch still isn't good, but it's better than crunch. The other crunch. And so things like that.
But how do you? Is there still a planning? Like, how are the moments that you still push? Like sometimes you need the crunch, right? Sometimes you need just a sprinkle of knowing that you have to push it a bit so things get done. How do you go about with that?
Yeah, some team members are like, they love what they're working on, and I like me, when I finish this call, I'm going to do a little bit more work because we love making stuff and we love what we're working on. So, but apart from that, I think when we were publishing on the Quest, we were initially rejected as a launch title because it wasn't a game. That's not what they were looking for at the time.
Oh, really? They had qualifications for really
big time. And
okay.
The Quest is quite difficult. Like, it's quite hard to get on the Quest store. but we launched a. I might as well share the story. It's pretty funny, I guess. We devised a plan to get them to change their mind, and I'm trying to. Oh, the main one was we had to make the port to Quest significantly better, and so everyone in the company stopped what they were doing, and we worked with a little bit of crunch to really ramp up the quality, because we blew the first chance. Like, they saw the first attempt we made, and they're like, "Nah, sorry guys."
Wow.
And we knew how many they were rejecting. They didn't have time barely to even test it the first time. There's no way we thought they're going to try it a second time. And so we're like, shit, okay, we need to ramp up the quality, knowing that there's a good chance it's not going to help, but we just had to do it anyway, because we knew it was going to be big, because it was such a good headset. And we flew the entire team to San Francisco to go to Oculus Connect to at least meet some of the team. And that helped build some relationships. One of the staff members from Oculus we met, and it's not like we're hounding, we just went to the bars and parties like you usually do at events, and eventually you accidentally bump into people. And so that's what we knew might happen, and it did happen. And then we just left it at that. And then 2 weeks later, they said, "So there's been a lot of people talking about you guys. You're on." And we're like, "Oh my god!" they took a second. They took a second look, and they liked the. Oh yeah, we recorded a video of the changes, like 30 seconds, to show the changes, to break down the barrier for them to try a second time, and yeah, it worked. And that was a little bit of crunch then, and we celebrated. That was a good one.
What were the biggest changes? What were the biggest changes? Like, why did they refuse the first time, and what did you change for?
It was like frames per second, and
mostly rendering quality. So it's really hard to optimize for the Quest. Going from the PC version, which had like over 1 million polygons, and the Quest version, we had to rebuild the city from scratch because the polygons on the PC it was just too many. And one example is like the fire. So in the firefighting mode, on the PC version, we had these nice big transparent animated fire particles. And on the Quest version, because we were in a rush, we just put on this really dirty, low poly, blocky fire particles. And our intent was, that'll be fine. We'll just update it later. We just need to show them the first version in time to get it on there. We didn't explain, don't worry, the graphics aren't finished yet. Like, we're probably a bit arrogant, to be honest, thinking that, we'll be all right.
We'll get it, yeah.
So yeah, we were definitely overconfident. And so updating those fire particles. So we had to get a nice looking shader that would work well on the Oculus Quest and performant, and it costs a lot to make things optimized, and it takes a lot of time. So get fake shadows on the cars, and when light shines in between clouds, we had to find a way to get that to work on the Quest, and like we called them God rays.
Yeah,
and
if somebody, sorry,
you go.
Yeah, if somebody wants to, if somebody's starting with a new experience or game, is there some steps or advice that you could give to them to, maybe that they can already do a lot of pre-work that they don't have to go
sure. Three things I'd focus on.
Okay.
One is marketing before you even pitch them. So get a fan base. If you can get some IP, if you know someone who knows someone who can get some IP, of the TV show. I mean, that would be a form of marketing. If you can get a fan base on YouTube or on Discord, or on Reddit, and show that there's excitement for your title, you can then screenshot that and then show, hey, look, look at this. And that's another form of marketing that you could do. And the third, and so that, or a lot of animated GIFs of it. And I'll come back to that.
Yeah.
And the third thing would be your trailer. Even if it's 12 seconds or 10 seconds teaser trailer, that is just, oh my God, yes. That would be far better than a long full-length trailer. And that trailer has to blow them away, because that's pretty much how long they'll have to have a look even. And I think it's important that they have a high quality bar. On PC, there was probably 10 to 1.
Yeah.
Like one good quality game for 9 lower quality games, and which is great on PC and great for sorting. And if you're like a bit of a tech enthusiast, or you have a high-end, even if you own a high-end PC, you already know how to find the good games on Steam. But for people that don't own PCs, and like the general consumer that isn't like that, they don't know how to pick out the good game to buy. So Oculus have to do that filter in order for it to go mainstream, to guarantee that if you buy a title, it's going to be good. Like Nintendo Switch and PlayStation have a very high quality bar as well. And for that very reason, because their customers are the general population.
No.
And so that's why they do that. And that's why the trailer is important. And the game has to be and play really well. Because if they like the trailer, they will then play the game. And that game has to be highly polished. So for every hour that you spend on making the game, spend an hour on polish as well, and iterating that. And that first, they'll probably play for like 30 seconds to a minute. And so your first minute of gameplay has to just be like, oh my God, yes. All right, you guys, if you just do this and this, you guys could be on. We'll schedule in for November next year or something. Or they'll start to say when you should be ready by, and when should you have this finished by. But they have a go-to response now, and that'll be to go in the app lab, which is perfectly fine. But I'm a bit worried because I don't see many games go from the app lab to the store. Like all of the big titles that come out, they somehow skip the app lab, and I wish I knew the secrets to doing that. So if it was me, I'd have a crack at getting in there without going via the app lab, even though that will be their response first. And so if they respond, let's put it on the app lab and see how you go. Just say, like, if you have a lot of, if you've got if your trailer is better than the trailers on the regular store, if the first 60 seconds of gameplay is better than the games on the Quest store, and you have some marketing, you go back to them, say, as you can, this is going to be a big title. I don't want to go via the app lab. But if you haven't got those 3 things, and you say that, Richie from Richie's Plank said that, they're going to laugh, and it's going to look bad on me. But you have to; those 3 things have to be done, and you may have a chance for them to go
consider it. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that there's all those different parts are important to get on the Oculus Store. Besides just having the right frame rate and whatnot, like the setup.
I would really try get your following on Steam first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And show, hey, look, I mean, that's what we ended up doing. We included that in our little pitch video. Like, you don't have to request a meeting. You can just make them a pitch video. Hey, that's my 30-second pitch. And they may watch it. And so that we included some comments from fans from the PC version to have just to show, hey, look, maybe this, yeah. I think you got it.
Makes
sense. Yeah,
for sure.
You were also mentioning, like in your first point, I'm guessing something like animated GIFs or something, and you were touching up on that.
Yeah,
wondering what it was.
I'm just gonna, while I'm talking, I'm just gonna do a quick Google. There's a GDC talk.
You can share your screen as well, by the way, if you want to.
I'll share the link for you.
Yeah.
I think it was. Yeah. Shall I share the link? Will you be able to share the link on your podcast?
Yeah, sure.
It's a GDC talk, Global Game Development Conference. If you just search for GIF marketing GDC, it'll be like the first result on YouTube. It's just it's about using GIFs effectively to sell your products, your video games, and it's just a very effective way. It's a few seconds looped video of what your game is, and then if that works well, you don't abuse it, you can come up with a creative title and put it on Reddit. But if it's not compelling, it's hard to break through because the first person that sees it will then give it a downvote, and then it'll be 0. And then it's like, oh, now no one else will see it. And so you can't just post it and say and try and sell the game. Like, you need a story in your title just to post it. And like, you could maybe ask a question instead. Which one do you prefer? This is a game I'm working on. Do you prefer this or this? And then it becomes something to talk about.
Yeah, like a collaboration with the community.
Yeah.
If you're building new titles right now, right? What is your focus point where you're focused on building new titles? Is it purely like going for if the game sells or not, or is it more like a creative perspective? Like, I really need this out of there. How do you go about it?
The game. We are working on a new title, and we chose it. We had like 10 possible titles that we were looking at, right? And we rated them each by, do we have the ability to make this? Do we want to make this one? And does it have profitability potential?
Yeah. And
so we gave each one a score out of 10 and then totaled them up. And so to answer your question, it's like profit potential is definitely a lot of the equation because it's like also what hole will this fill in the market? Because you don't want to make games that are too similar because it's harder to market yourself then. And so I think we'll be that's
good.
We're not making games. If we want to keep everyone employed, we have to make games that's going to sell money.
But that's your job as executive as well, right? It's like you have to know your business. And is there? Do you also allow creative input from the team or something? What is the first idea that you come up with these titles? Like, how do you come with the ideas?
Yeah, I would usually, when we came up with our next title, there's only 6 of us in the company, so they weren't really. Now at like 30 something, they weren't there when we decided to start making this title. So I think if we did now, we definitely would get creative input. We'd prototype a few different games together and play them together and get feedback together and test on strangers together. And that'd all be involved.
Yeah.
But like when in business, a lot of people will what's a good analogy? There's a saying, death by consensus, where if you ask everyone what you should do all the time, but like
you'll never figure it out. Like there's too many opinions.
You'd end up not doing something that is profound because you just vote for the general consensus. And we may end up with making a game that the developers want to make, but no one wants to buy it because the developers are only a small group of people. So and also they're not the ones paying for it, so they'll end up wanting to make a game that they want to make and not necessarily one that will sell well. And so but also the counter argument to that is you want your team to be happy and have creative input, so you have to find a good balance.
But how do you decide which idea is a good sellable idea? Because
okay, so that's a skill in its own, I guess. Like, I can share how we would do it. So we would look at what games sell well on other platforms and what's not on. We would see games that there's too many of these kind of games already. But then the counter argument can also be true. If there's already a lot of games like this, there's already a market for it. So that you can't use that rule alone. You need to have your own spin on something like that. I want to say it's got to be some intuition, but that intuition does have a meaning, and I can't put a finger on it right now. It's guesswork. So it is guesswork.
It's experience as well, right? Like by doing something over and over, you can make better decisions anyway. But having more data in your brain.
If you fail as often as you can, like I definitely have my share of failures in business, like not in the game industry, which I think helps build that intuition because you're used to failing so often. You kind of get it more of instinct to know when your ideas aren't actually going to work.
Thank you so much for all the time you spent already here with us.
Yeah, it was really great.
It's really good diving.
Inside information.
Yeah, it was really, really good. I think it was a very good convo. Really excited for people to see this as well, especially knowing how many people know the experience. I think it's very interesting. To get the behind the scene look and getting to know you and I think it was a very good conversation in my opinion. I really liked it. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks for all your knowledge and time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it was great being on your podcast. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
I can't wait who you'll be interviewing next.
Yeah.